all for coming. You know, you guys decided to pick the, in my opinion, the coolest session, but I'm a little bit biased. So we're going to kick this off. If you are here for the 2024 A Cyborg Odyssey talk, you are in the right place. If you're not here for that talk, we're going to call it fate, and you just wound up in the right place anyway. So I do work for CyberArk Software. My name is Len Noe, pronounced no, opposite of yes. And if you ask my parents, I was named very appropriately because I've heard Len, no, pretty much my entire damn life. I am a transhuman, an ethical hacker, and a white hat for CyberArk Software. I am also one half of the podcast team for Cybercognition, which is a futuristic podcast talking about the human experience and how it's going to affect us moving forward into the future. I am also a first-time author. My first book was released in October. It was called Human Hacked: My Life and Lessons as the World's First Augmented Ethical Hacker. You can find the book anywhere on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and yes, that was a shameless plug, but we're going to deal with it anyway. So let's get right down into the meat and potatoes of this. What does tomorrow's threat look like? Now, I've been here at the B-Sides, and I have heard so many conversations about the potential threats that AI presents to us as a species moving forward. But I have a different perspective on this. I don't necessarily think that that is the only future threat we need to be looking at. These are my hands, and these are actually an old set of x-rays. Currently, I have 10 different microchips between my elbows and my fingertips that allow me the ability to interface directly with multiple protocols. They're all basically stemming from either near-field communication or radio frequency. I have everything from a credit card, so I can actually tap to pay with my hand, which if you do that, you might get told that you have the mark of the beast. Now, just saying that, I want everyone to know I had no idea that the mark of the beast was actually Visa. I have some chips in my body that are there for my own security to actually enhance my capabilities online that are FIPS compliant, allow me the ability to get one-time password codes. I can do HMAC SHA-1, PGP encryption, hardware keys. I can even take and put a Tesla's valet key onto an implant. I don't have one, but my buddy did, so that allowed me to steal his car. So the truth is, the human being is the future threat vector. And one of the things that I'd like to propose to this audience right now to think about as I go through this presentation is how do we protect against an attack if you don't even know the attack is possible? So, allow me to introduce you to a subspecies of human beings that's been around since the 1950s. In my opinion, it actually goes way back farther than that. The term is transhuman. Now, I want to take a minute here and just make sure that everyone is on the same page. Being a transhuman has absolutely nothing to do with my gender ideology or my sexual preferences. These words have been thrown around quite a bit in recent times. What this means is a transhuman is any human being that is utilizing technology to either enhance or improve the human condition. By those types of definitions, the caveman that used a tree branch as a crutch was a transhuman. I'm not going to ask everybody to raise their hands because I'm not really the class participation kind of guy, but I'd be willing to bet that there's probably somebody in this room that is wearing a continuous glucose meter for diabetes, or possibly even a diabetic insulin pump. These are considered transhumans. Anyone that's using a stem pain controlling device, pacemakers, cochlear audible implants for hearing, these are all considered transhumans. Now, transhumanism got its official name back in 1965 by an English scientist named Dr. Julian Huxley. He was a natural scientist, and his philosophy was that humanity should be able to use technology to address deficiencies within the human condition, but it should go no farther. So essentially, this will keep all human beings on the same level. Take example, one of the most well-identifiable types of this particular situation, the peg leg from a pirate. This was one of the earliest representations of transhumanism. Once you get past the medical portion of it, there was another gentleman that came out in the late 80s whose name is FM 2030. Don't ask me what his real name is because I can't actually pronounce it. But he legally changed his name to FM 2030. And you may not be familiar with FM, but I know you're familiar with his work. FM was actually one of the founders of cryogenics. So he is actually frozen right now in the hopes that they will be able to reanimate his body sometime in the future. And FM's philosophy was any technology that can be added to the human experience to improve the condition, it's on the table. So we have two very conflicting opinions. One that says we should not go anywhere beyond where the humans started, and the other one that's basically said, if it's on the table, it's fair game. So let me give you a little bit of a warning. The next couple of slides, if you are squeamish, you might want to close your eyes for about the next 3 to 5 seconds. So when we talk about transhumans, I am what is known as a grinder. So we are do-it-yourself biohackers or transhumans. Like I said, I currently have 10 different implants ranging from physical access, credit cards. I even have a magnet in the tip of my finger, which actually has provided me an additional sense, that I was not born with. Putting a magnet in your finger will actually allow you the ability to feel electromagnetic fields and currents, almost like a spidey sense. And when you have crazy friends like I do, look at me. I may look like, some big scary guy, but I am terrified of very strong magnets. Y'all don't know pain until you have a friend, and we all have these kinds of friends, that are gonna run up at you and try and snap an earth magnet on the magnet that's inside your finger. Y'all don't know pain till you've been pinched from the inside and the outside of your skin. But this is just one example. This is a gentleman by the name of Tim Cannon. What you see there is the very first implantable consumer electronic that went into a human being. Anybody want to take a guess what that was for? You guys are not allowed. Anybody want to take a guess what that did? That was the original Fitbit. That was implanted in his arm in Germany. And he actually got on a plane and flew back to the United States with his arm looking like that. The point behind this, and this was supposed to be in there for, I believe it was 90 days. He made it a couple of weeks before he said that the weight of the device itself was giving him kind of anxiety, so it was removed a little early. There was some issues with placements of some of the electronics in there, but it proved that this could actually be done. Here's the same gentleman. Now, that what you see on his hand may look like a crazy glove, but once you get into, like I said, putting magnets into your fingertips, those are sonars. And what it's doing is around his magnet and his pinky, it's working with those sonar detectors to where he actually has the ability of human sonar. Those waves will come out. The closer he gets, the stronger the reaction within the coil is going to be. This was one of the first consumer-grade electronics implantables that you could ever buy. It was called the North Star. I remember when this came out. This was 2014, 2015, give or take. And I remember when this first came out, I was like, this is cool, but it makes absolutely no point to me. Because as you can see, what it does is it basically makes you look like Iron Man. And this is great if you want to show that you're different. But a little background on me, I'm an ex-1%er Outlaw Motorcycle Club member. I'm an ex-Black Hat. So the idea of having something that's going to draw attention to me, not something that's really my thing. From there, this is a gentleman by the name of Rich Lee. In my opinion, the godfather of grinders. If you get a chance, look this guy up. His story is fascinating. What he's gone through as a result of his decision to augment himself should not be something that's experienced by anyone. In my opinion, the law was used against this gentleman in terms of when he went through some issues with his family. But what you see here, he actually put magnets in the targuses of his ears And what looks like a necklace is actually an induction coil, and he has in-ear headphones. Now think about that. Where are we right now? We're in a casino. If you're playing blackjack and you've got somebody that's looking at the dealer's hold card, you have a private communication channel that nobody else would even know was happening. Or even this. Yeah, I know. It looks scary, don't it? What is going on here is this was an experiment with chlorin 9. This is a solution that, yes, it makes the eyes look completely black for about 15 minutes, but what it does is it actually allows the eye to be able to see in pretty much complete darkness. They put him and another 2 gentlemen in a completely pitch black room. He was able to pick out shapes and patterns in complete darkness. Granted, the effects of this only lasted about 45 minutes to an hour and a half, but once again, it shows that what the human body is capable of is far beyond whatever we feel that we were born with. So I've been doing these types of presentations since 2020, and I actually introduced 3 attacks at the RSA conference in 2021, and most people didn't get a chance to see that because that was when we were all hanging out at home. Y'all remember that thing called COVID? Sorry. So I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to show you guys those first 3 attacks that I debuted. So the first one is called Handshake. My attack, I get to name it. So this is a physical access attack. The chip that I have right here in my left hand is actually a MyFair Classic, as well as Prox, Indala, Diamond, Pyramid, and 126 other physical access protocols. I have another chip in the back side of my right forearm that takes care of HID 1, 2, and 3, and pretty much all of the other missing protocols. So all I have to do is essentially skim your badge, write it down to an implant, and then compromise physical security. Now, one of the first questions I get when we get to the Q&A section is, why? So I'm going to address that right here and right now. Due to the fact that these particular tools are inside of my body, they're covered by the medical and privacy laws of both HIPAA and GDPR. So therefore, the authorities do not have the legal right to even question me. So let me show you what this looks like in real life. So I'm going to be using a tool called a Proxmark Chameleon Mini, and we're going to scan a badge. Yes, that used to be my badge, and yes, I look like every hacker clip art you've ever seen in your life. So we're going to get a new unique identifier. I'm going to pull that into the Chameleon program, and just so that we can make sure everything's nice and easy, I'm going to name this Lens ID. Okay? Now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to scan my implant so that I can get a baseline. Very simple. Hit the button, and we go back to the phone, and you'll see that we get a new unique identifier. And we're going to open it up. We'll make sure that there's actually data. Now, at this point, in the real world, I own you. At this point, I can take this, if I'm part of a larger collective, I can give it out to the other members of my collective, and we can start working on a larger, expanded attack base. Or, if I want to monetize this, this is where I can actually sell that information to an initial access broker, and there's nothing you can do about it at that point. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to grab both of those dump files that I previously uploaded to the cloud to share or monetize, and I'm going to pull them both back down into my cell phone, and I'm going to run a diff command against my ID compared to my actual implant. And what we're going to find is all of the sectors are the same except for sector 0, line A. So we're going to start off by selecting my ID, then the implant, and now we can see everything, like I said, is identical except for that first block. So all I have to do is write that down to the implant. And I can use my cell phone to do it. So we very quickly turn around, write this information back down, and I'm going to go ahead and map out all the keys just to make sure everything transferred right. Then I'm going to go ahead, scan again, and you'll notice that what we have under the ID, the numbers that I would suggest you look at are at the end of the line A string will be 76869, as well as the implant. So while you're watching the rest of this video, I want to throw a scenario out there. We've been able to clone cards for almost 15 years now. If I use this particular attack vector, I know I'm going to be caught. So let's walk through this scenario. I'm in your data center. What's going to happen? You're going to call your operations. They're going to grab me. They're going to stick me in an office. They're going to call the police. Now, when it comes to committing a crime, especially within the United States, and I am really bad with my Latin, so I'm probably going to butcher this, but I believe it's pronounced as mens rea, which means malicious intent. You can commit a crime and not be a criminal. It depends on what were your intentions to commit a crime. So this is why in the past, where when we compromise physical security, if they catch you with a cloned card or a Proxmark or some type of tool, you're going to jail. However, in my situation, when the police get there and search me, they find nothing. The worst they will be able to do is just trespass me off the property. Thank you, US government, European Union, HIPAA and GDPR. So the next attack, now this one is only against Android devices. So if you guys can't see this, this was the large implant that I showed you in the photo. This is an RFID and NFC chip. Its coil is large enough that I can actually hold a mobile device in its correct natural orientation, and that NFC will read through the density of my hand, and I can actually compromise the device through physical contact. So what we're going to do in this next one is I'm going to actually download a malicious Trojan APK onto a device, and I'm going to do this in real time for y'all. So we're here at BSides Philadelphia. Y'all don't know me, I don't know you. If you didn't know I had these particular devices in my body, I'm going to show you how quickly I can social engineer someone, and I'm going to do this in real time. So what you see on the top is an ngrok session for obfuscation. I'm going to open up a Metasploit listener in the bottom. You guys ready to do a little role play with me? Okay, here we go. Can I borrow somebody's phone, please? I just got off of the phone with my daughter. My phone died. One of my grandchildren, they were in an ambulance. There was an accident. My granddaughter was going to a hospital. The phone died. I don't know where they're going. Can I borrow someone's phone? Okay, shoot, now that I got a phone, what's my daughter's phone number? Who remembers phone numbers anymore? We just program them into our phones. Oh gosh, what is it? 734-7346. Oh my gosh. I feel like the worst grandfather in the world. I hope my grandson or my granddaughter's okay. Geez, I can't think of what their phone number is. You know what? I'm just going to have to go charge my phone. Here's your phone back. We're done. I used an NFC URL redirector. Thank you. I used an NFC URL redirector to point to a location out on the internet where I had a Trojan APK. I installed that. I'm dumping call logs. I can dump your SMS. And when it comes to Android, I can actually pop a shell, navigate your file system. And I like to throw this out there for just so people understand. How many people, again, you don't have to raise your hand. This is more of a rhetorical question. How many people in this room have some type of business application on their mobile device? Maybe it's Office 365. Maybe it's something else. But if you do not have those particular applications and cloud-based services properly locked down, I can ride those conduits from your mobile device right back into your enterprise. So, like I said, that was an attack specifically towards the Android operating system. Don't worry, my iPhone friends. We actually have another attack called Fleshhook. So, this being a hackers conference, I'd like to think that there will be some people in here that have heard of this tool, but this is an oldie but a goodie. Anyone here familiar with a tool called Beef? I got a few hands. For those of you that are not familiar with it, I implore you, go check out this tool. Beef stands for the Browser Extension Exploit Framework. So this is the tool behind the urban legend of be careful what websites you go to because the minute you bring the page up, the bad guys are in your systems. Guess what? That ain't no urban legend, it's real. It utilizes JavaScript, is cross-platform, and due to the lockdown nature of Apple's iOS, it's very difficult to get a Trojan in there because you got to jailbreak the phone. But don't worry, the web is free for everyone. So, and as somebody that likes to present things, I love using Beef if for no other reason than it presents really, really well. I mean, how many times have you seen somebody display some kind of a hacking technique and all it is a bunch of code on the screen that you don't understand anyway? Well, Beef actually gives us a really nice web UI and a bunch of built-in modules. So once again, this is very easy. All I have to do is redirect to a Beef-infected website. Since I deal with predominantly security professionals, I cloned the Putty website. Because realistically, who would freak out if they saw Putty up in one of their browser tabs? Probably not anybody. So it's very simple. All I got to do is get close enough to trigger that, pull up the website. Now, through the Beef tool, I can do on-device spear phishing. We can do geolocation. We can do IP enumeration, ping sweeps. We can get persistence. I can even turn on your microphones and your cameras. And as a father of 5 daughters, this is a very frightening concept. But nobody really thinks about it. And the reason I bring this up is because for being one of the more secure operating systems out there, iOS, with its new release of iOS 16, just made every one of its users far less secure. When it comes to the Android architecture, we have the ability to turn off native NFC reads with a switch. Apple, with iOS 16, has removed the ability to turn off NFC. And we're going to talk about why that's such a terrible thing as we continue down the road here. But as you can see, I'm provided with a bunch of built-in modules I can exploit right off the bat. So those were the 3 attacks that I debuted at RSA. Now, the following 2, these are 2 attacks that I've added as a result of writing my book. So the first one is an implant-based man-in-the-middle. And this one is the first time I've actually decided to start using multiple chips and additional hardware in my attack process. So what I've done is I'm using a Raspberry Pi Zero W2 with a battery pack on it that's running Ubuntu 2404. Why? Because one of the features of 2404 is the very quick and easy ability to create a Wi-Fi hotspot. You'll see it when we do it. And what I've done is I've put a transparent proxy behind that hotspot. I'm going to be using 2 separate microchip implants. The first one is an NFC redirection tag to where I put the root certificate for that transparent proxy. And the second NFC trigger is a join SSID Wi-Fi network. And before we get started, I get this all the time, and I'm going to get this out of the way up front. Len, we're security conscious here. We're B-sides. We shut our Wi-Fi off when we leave the house. Guess what? It doesn't matter. The NFC trigger, part of the routine is to actually return on your Wi-Fi. So let me show you guys what this looks like in real life. So like I said, we start off with a standard Ubuntu 2404. I go into the network properties, and this is the only reason I use Ubuntu. I mean, I could have done this through code, but let's be honest, it's a pain. You know, and we are hackers, so therefore we do things for low-hanging fruit and ease of use. So just like that, I now have a Wi-Fi hotspot. I launch a script that actually will start up my transparent proxy, set up my IP forwarders and my IP forwarding as well as my IP tables, and leave me with a terminal. So this is a 2-part attack. It doesn't have to be done all at the same time. The first step is going to be downloading the certificate. Before we do that, I wanted to show everybody how easy it is for me to actually program these chips. This is a tool called NFC Pro, available on the Android marketplace. This basically is how I have to program them. I have multiple attacks programmed on my phone, and I can program these chips on the fly. So first thing we're going to do, we set up the URL to the download, and this is what it looks like when I trigger it. So it's going to say, what application do you want to use? I want to use Chrome. So now all I got to do, let's just install the certificate. No. Android said you cannot install certificates natively directly from the download folder. But if you go up to pull the window blind down, hit the gear, go to settings, and type in certificates, it will let you install it directly without any additional step-up authentication. So from there, Now we have the root level certificate of the transparent proxy installed. We go back into my library of attacks, and we select the one for connect to SSID network, which has already been preset and configured to connect to that rogue access point that I have running on the Raspberry Pi. Takes just a few seconds to actually go ahead and program the chip. And then once again, if you have your Wi-Fi turned off, the first part of this NFC routine is to actually re-enable Wi-Fi and connect to the predetermined SSID. So once I say, yep, go ahead and connect, anything that's going to come across the wire, all of your background processes, anything that you happen to pull your phone out and do, let's go back to my transparent proxy portal page, I'm gonna get in clear text. How's that for fun? And the trick is, unless you actually know that these types of attacks are happening, would you even bother looking down and seeing that let's say we were here at this conference and I did this. When you get back to your room, would you notice that your Wi-Fi was turned back on? Would you go look through your Wi-Fi networks and see what you were connected to? 9 out of 10 people, the answer is going to be no. So these are things to just keep in mind. The last attack I'm going to show you today is an implant-based phishing or smishing attack. They work in both directions. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and use my NFC Tools Pro, and I already have these attacks, like I said, sitting in a library waiting for me to use. So in this case, I'm going to do a phish. Now this is a little bit different. What is the hardest part about actually pulling off a phishing campaign? Getting someone to believe the initial fake hook. So if you guys don't know these two gentlemen down here in the front row, these are part of the Cyber Circus Network. This is Jason and Kevin. Let's say Jason is my actual target. I'm gonna go after Kevin. I'm gonna compromise his phone so that when that email comes out, it's gonna come from his default email carrier or his default messaging program. There's no way to determine that this is a fake initial email because it's coming from a legitimate source. So once again, we go in, this is what it looks like. I want to complete this action utilizing the standard Gmail. It's already been pre-configured. In my example, I'm sending this somebody attacking me who's trying to get to one of my associates, Mr. Vishal Patel. And this is what the email looks like on the other end. It's coming from a legitimate email account, and it's got an embedded hyperlink. So this could be repointing them to a malware site. It could be another situation where I'm using beef. It could be anything. But the moral of the story is Jason would have no way of knowing that that was not actual real information coming from Kevin. So at this point, I have no doubt that everybody is going, okay, Len, y'all cyborgs are here, we get it. Now what do we do about it? So before we start talking about the mitigations for these types of attacks, we need to talk about the technologies that are actually involved here. So as I said earlier, we are seeing such an expansion of bring your own device over the course of 2024 that the expectation it's going to continue to increase over the course of 2025. And at the heart of this whole conversation is a simple little protocol called near field communication. Now, NFC was never intended to be a secured protocol, but yet we treat it as if it was. And the problem with turning off NFC is it goes against what society is actually currently pushing us to use, which is Apple Pay and Android Pay. The protocol that's behind the ability to tap to pay is NFC. So now that we know that, we can actually talk a little bit about how to mitigate these strategies, because we built an entire section of our economy around an insecure protocol. So for starters, when it comes to the physical security, anyone here have a single point password or a single factor authentication to get into privileged things upon your digital networks? No, because we know better than that. Realistically, if you want your cyber insurance, multi-factor authentication is the minimum that you must have in order to be able to qualify. But yet when it comes to our physical locations, we don't take the same type of actions. I mean, again, if you want to raise your hand for this, be my guest, but I wouldn't recommend it. Anyone here have just a scan, click, door open to your data center? This is a single point of access. And if I can get physical access to a server, the amount of damage that I can do is so much more than what I could do coming in over a wire. But we don't change it. I used to work for a human resources and payroll company. It's 3 letters, starts with A and ends in P, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. And just to get into our building, not into the data center, but just to get into the building was a minimum of a badge and a PIN. If you wanted to get into our data center, it was anywhere between 3 to 5 layers of protection before that door was going to open. So for starters, when it comes to our physical security, we need to treat it with at least the same minimum skepticism that we treat our digital. So when it comes to the digital attacks that I showed you, I've got 2 sets of recommendations. The first one is for enterprise, where you can potentially use mobile device management policies. For starters, and I'm going to tell you the policies that you actually need to consider to prevent this. So for starters, NFC is by default, as I've said numerous times, an insecure protocol. Do not allow standing privilege of NFC. I'm not telling you don't allow them to use it, because it does have a legitimate function. But just like we have step-up authentication within digital networks, if you want to make a tap to pay, go into your settings, turn on the NFC, make your payment. Don't allow the NFC to remain on for more than, say, 5 to 6 minutes at a time. We don't have a problem making these kind of requests from the digital aspect. We need to make it within our own personal lives as well. Number 2, the beef attack. Do not create an MDM policy that will not allow for your pages to remain persistent after the browser closes. Beef is one of those tools where until I can actually run additional parameters to get persistence, I only have that connection as long as that particular page is in the browser. So if you close the tab, I lose the connection. Do not, once somebody closes down out of their browser, close all open tabs. That will negate that particular attack vector. When it comes to us and our individual capacities, nobody likes to hear this, but I hate to be the one to break it to y'all. We need some behavioral modification. If I was to ask anyone in this room right now, can I look in your wallets or your purses? Is anybody going to hand them over to me? But yet, if somebody walks up and says, hey, let me see your phone for a minute, I got a video I want to show you, there's a 50-50 chance that you're going to hand that phone over. If we talk about what's in our wallets and purses, maybe a driver's license, some credit cards, maybe a medical ID, the amount of data that's in your mobile device is exponentially more, and we treat it as if it's a toy. So first recommendation is respect the data on your mobile devices. And if you wouldn't give your wallet to someone, don't give your mobile device to someone. Disable your vulnerable protocols wherever possible. This is more, as I said, for the Android users than the iPhone, because you guys unfortunately are kind of SOL at the moment after this last update. I do expect there to be some type of third-party application that will be made that may be able to shut this down just from a security perspective, or I expect Apple to completely freak out due to the backlash that they're already getting over this. But unfortunately, there's not much you guys that are running iOS can do right now except be very, very cautious. This is one of those points where I said, don't let your mobile device out of your hands. And finally, start really taking the strong security fundamentals that we've learned from the industry and start putting them into practice in your own lives. How many people here stay up to date, and the minute they've got updates, they're on them, or do you sit? You know, the bad guys only have to be right once. You have to be right every single time. And at this point, we're not talking about your corporate assets anymore. We're talking about your own individual assets and your own identity. And finally, keep pushing the zero trust concepts. Trust but verify. So with that, I don't really have any time for Q&A, but I will be hanging out over by the barcode booth when I get done here. So if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. This is the book that I was referring to earlier. The demonstrations that you saw today are actually broken down in that book. We are available on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and anywhere books are sold. We have Kindle, and we do have the audiobook coming out on the 12th. So we are able to handle everybody's particular preference. With that, I'd like to throw up my information one last time if anybody wants to take a quick snapshot of that. I'm very active on social media. Hit me on LinkedIn. If you're one of those people like I used to be who doesn't like asking questions in large groups, I know how that is. Give me a shout on LinkedIn. If you see me somewhere, walk up. I'm a very, very approachable person. And with that, I would like to thank you all very much for taking the time to come and listen to my talk today, and I hope you found it entertaining as well as educational.